Next up, I want you to take a look at Cobalt Systems and invite Cris Garcia to the stage, who'll talk about what they're doing to think plug, play, and affordable. Cris is the Director of Sales and Engineering. Great to see you. Thank you.
Hey guys, today's what I'll be discussing is this topic of IPMX. Some of you may know what IPMX is, some may not. If you're a manufacturer like our friends from Lavo, understand what that is, including 2110. But we wanted to talk about IPMX because we, as a manufacturer, we have devices that are enabling the IP workflows with 2110. But we also see a lot of issues with the having talent that understands how to make those connection points and understanding what the architecture for a 2110 workflow looks like. So we feel that IPMX sort of could help take some of that pressure away and help ease the whole transition into an IP workflow from a baseband SDI or HDMI. And I understand that a lot of your corporate, some of the users that have been using traditional broadcast products or solutions are now slowly migrating into an IP domain. And I think IPMX, as far as we see it, sort of helps to sort of break into that IP domain where you're now in network islands or bigger islands that sort of help you to get content to and from locations, but also being able to have more flexibility locally. So if we look at what IPMX is, basically it's just making 2110 easier by not having all the complexities of 2110. So that sort of takes away all the understanding the requirements for the architecture. For example, any PTP timing that's required, no grandmaster that's required for an IPMX workflow. Also, with an IPMX, you can have NMOS. So that means that you can discover and orchestrate devices on the network without having to have dedicated engineers that are defining multicasts per network to be able to talk to each other. So that helps in that regard. Also, any devices that you have on the network that can be discovered can easily just plug and play without having to predefine those, or if you shut down a system, it's gonna have to come back up. And you know, you're going to have somebody reestablish that connection again. Other things that we think are going to help people utilize an IP workflow or IPMX would be being able to have ease of ownership, or just the cost of getting into a new IP workflow. It's much lower, the investment, because a switch is not a very expensive switch, which is oftentimes the case for a 2110 infrastructure. The other thing is, if you wanted to do some light compression, you can also enable JPEG access. I saw that in the with our Lavo friends. They can also do that. And not only us, but there's other companies that can sort of drive IPMX or 2110 in the same fashion. But we wanted to sort of expose or talk about IPMX in the sense that if you have any existing 2110 infrastructure or workflow, but there's a lot of issues or pains with your existing links, IPMX can sort of help you reduce that and help you also reduce the cost of operation and give you a bit more flexibility with the JPEG access. You can, as I point out here, you can also use a switch with a 1 gig connection without having to have a very expensive switch to drive that. So these are some of the very obvious comparisons or simple differences between 2110 and IPMX. But let's just say now if you have an island, like let's say De Anza College, that maybe wants to connect with another facility, maybe feed some content from here. Students maybe want to send content over to the Apple Park. Well, you can utilize IPMX to maybe drive that. You can establish links, and I'll show you guys some of our solutions that we have, not only us, but other manufacturers as well, that can be able to take an IPMX ecosystem or island and transport that over to a different location. So that's one of the beauties that IPMX offers, that ability to be able to have multi-locations, multi-destinations. It's very scalable. It's not contained within one location. You can also encode and decode within IPMX. So if you have the appropriate device, basically you arrive to that encoder or decoder as an IPMX signal, and you basically join a local network, IPMX network, and you can either encode or decode, and you can use your flavor of either MPEG-4, HEVC, and you can utilize any of the popular, for example, SRT or RIST protocols to give you more redundancy, better protection as there's encryption. And you can also, as an example, utilize or repurpose some resources that you may have in a different island or a different location, as opposed to reestablishing, which is what you normally do in a traditional baseband world. You establish another set of cameras, tools, talent, whatever. In this case, you can reutilize that without having to reestablish those resources locally. The other big thing is in many corporate installations, you have a lot of HDMI devices, whether you're taking HDMI from a computer, a playout source, camera, anything that's going to a monitor wall display or some other devices capturing that HDMI. There's always the issue of having HDMI and HDCP compliancy. So IPMX allows you to basically comply with that. And it'll support natively the RGB 444. So there's no need to do any of that traditional YCBCR to RGB conversion, which is in some cases you need to have, whether it's as our level friend said, if it's a credit or a license that allows you to have a color correction license to be able to massage just the content. In this case, you can go as an RGB to an RGB without having to retouch or massage that content. Many of our devices started as 2110 devices. Eventually, they migrated to IPMX because we saw that need of having to sort of deal with those headaches of 2110. Many of our customers happen to be sports production companies that had issues as the production crew traveled from location to location. So, we looked at IPMX and we thought, okay, this is a more easier approach to an IP network, and we started to get more involved with the VSF group, which is the Video Services Forum group, and we started to play an active role in that world to be able to define exactly what IPMX can do for existing users of 2110, and how this can also augment and give more flexibility to anybody that's currently using 2110. And if you have devices that are discovering and orchestrating other devices with the NMOS 0405, now you have a complete fluid workflow that can be auto sort of contained, almost not as in the AI world as our friend Bill Frank was saying, but this sort of helps to sort of help get those devices orchestrated and arranged in a way that sort of helps with the workflow. And this diagram that I have here is basically illustrating, as I call it here, it's a local AV network, ranges, and routing point. We have some sources, a PTZ camera, a Mac here in this case, that's feeding one of our devices. I consider this an edge device. This can be either a receiver or a transmitter. This device, as you see it here, that's a 2110 device, but it can also be an IPMX device. And this is fully compliant with the NMOS 0405, so that as soon as you have any devices that are talking to this device within the network, it can easily be discovered. It'll say if it's a receiver or transmitter. But the beauty with this is that you can take ordinary devices, put them into the ecosystem, into the IPMX ecosystem, and then somebody else can either say, hey, I want to take this feed for this camera or this studio, and I want to see it locally here, or I want to send this somewhere else. You can easily do that as long as you're connected to that IP network. And again, like I said, if you're not using any of this for 2110, you can invest in a lower cost switch that'll give you that flexibility. In this case, it's the same approach. So here we have, it's a laptop that's feeding a local monitor that's with the operator, the production, And then we also have our edge device. Can be, in this case, it's a receiver that's taking that HDMI source, converting that to an IPMX. And there is no PTP or any of that required here. It's just being able to discover and define what the device is. The network sees what the device is, and then we can decide where we send that off on the network. In our case here, we have a software multiviewer that allows us to basically take an IPMX natively, decode it as if you were to feed an HDMI or an SDI signal, and you get all the data that you would expect to see, whether it's if you have even signal loss, alarms, any of that, you can view that. And you can also have operators remotely log in through the web and be able to define exactly what is it that you want to see. But the point of this is that you can have localized production crew or folks that are utilizing certain resources locally, and you can have others in a different place that are monitoring those IPMX feeds. And if you wanted to take a complete production and then transport that over the internet, again, once it goes through the switch, you have your IPMX feeds that are going into the network. Our encoders can then take that IPMX, native IPMX signal, transport that over the internet as an SRT or RIST signal, and then you can have different locations depending on how you want to send it off. At that location, you bring it down as an IPMX. You can then decode it, do whatever you want to do, and then again refeed it again to one of those edge devices that's going to feed either a direct display out or monitor wall, or even go into a processor that's going to either scale it up or change the actual standard raster into a more unique proprietary raster. So this has been sort of our sort of where we've been involved. We see a lot of, not only us, but a lot of other manufacturers that have been dealing with folks that are using 2110. Our stuff, it's not so much software centric, it's more hardware based equipment. So a lot of these are very FPGA driven devices that are defined by whatever firmware you have on that. But we also have licenses that enable these products in our solutions to have essentially run them as 2110 or IPMX devices. And because they can talk NMOS, you can have in-band management. So that means that on the same network that you have your IPMX or 2110 traffic, you can control them, or you can have an out-of-band management, which means that we have dedicated APIs for these devices, but also we have a web UI that allows you to define exactly what they're going to be, either a transmitter, receiver, and if you're going to have maybe JPEG XS as one of the options for transporting your content over. Just to quickly show you guys where we stand with all these different devices. All these devices started as 2110, but now with IPMX, we've enabled many of our devices to support IPMX. So as you'll see, some are gateways, some are essentially just transmitter receiver devices or bidirectional transceiver devices, encoding, decoding. But we also have some that are used actively today in different types of production that are devices that can do scaling, they can do color correction, they can be audio procs, anything you want them to do. But in relation to the IPMX world, we wanted to make sure to have not only SDI or 2110, but also being able to offer IPMX so that if you get caught in a scenario where you need to use less bandwidth, or maybe you don't have the proper switch, IPMX can really get you out of a tight situation. And I think that for many of our customers, or at least users in the corporate world that have been utilizing or repurposing a lot of the baseband broadcast solutions, now they can start looking at IPMX to further scale out or give more flexibility to their workflows by having a bit more of flexibility, more options, not just being stuck with point-to-point devices, but rather being able to go from point to multi-point as the workflow requires. And again, that's more products that we have. Again, this is just to illustrate that anything that we have that's 2110 is also supporting IPMX, and all these can be licensed up or licensed down, depending on what the use case or need is. And that's it. Any questions?